Get out of the pool. Hands where we can see them. Those aren't exactly the words you expect to hear while floating peacefully in your own backyard on a Sunday morning. But that's how my day began. One second, I was drifting in calm blue water, watching sunlight dance across the surface like scattered diamonds. The next, I was staring down the barrels of 3 drawn guns. Behind them, through the gate I'd installed myself just 2 months ago, stood Courtney Whitmore, arms crossed, phone still in her hand. And that look on her face, that smug, satisfied expression, like she'd just caught a thief red-handed. She was shouting something about a dangerous trespasser, about protecting the neighborhood, about how the police needed to remove me immediately. From my own property, I'm David Martinez, 58 years old, retired fire chief after 30 years of running into burning buildings while everyone else ran out. This was supposed to be my quiet chapter. My wife Rosa and I had dreamed of a place like this for decades. She never got to see it. Cancer took her 2 years ago, 3 months before I signed the retirement papers. But I'd bought this house anyway. For her memory, for the life we'd planned. And now I was treading water with my hands raised, watching 3 Phoenix police officers trying to figure out why their morning had just gotten very, very complicated. Before I tell you how this madness spiraled so far out of control that it ended with a gunshot in my backyard, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And hit subscribe, because this story proves that sometimes the most dangerous thing in a quiet neighborhood isn't crime. It's a bored person with authority they don't actually have. When I first pulled into Sunridge Meadows with the moving truck in late January, it felt like I'd finally made it. Wide, clean streets lined with mature Palo Verde trees, desert landscaping that actually looked maintained, not the sad, sunburned attempts you see in most Arizona suburbs. Adobe-style houses in soft pastels, terracotta, cream, dusty rose, each one slightly different but harmonious. And mountains visible in every direction, the superstitions to the east, purple and gold in the Arizona sunset. After 3 decades of shift work, of sleeping in firehouses and coming home smelling like smoke and ash, of missing birthdays and anniversaries because someone's house was on fire, I'd found a place where I could finally exhale. The house wasn't new. Built in 1996, according to the inspection report, single-story ranch style with a red tile roof and thick stucco walls that kept the heat out. The backyard opened onto a small community park with walking trails and a playground where I could already imagine bringing my grandson someday. But what really sold me, what made me sign the papers, even though Rosa would never see it, was the pool. Not a fancy infinity edge thing with waterfalls and mood lighting. Just a simple rectangle, 20 feet by 40, with faded blue tile and a shallow end where Rosa had planned to do her water aerobics. The doctor had recommended it for her joints. She'd circled pool listings in the real estate magazine for months before the diagnosis. After she died, I almost walked away from the whole idea. What's the point of a dream house when the person you dreamed with is gone? But my daughter Isabella convinced me. "Dad," she'd said, holding my hand across the kitchen table in our old Tucson rental, "Mom would want you to live. Not just exist, live." So I bought it, for Rosa's memory, for the life we'd planned, for the version of me that still believed in second chapters. I spent the first 2 weeks fixing it up, replastering the deep end where the surface had cracked, installing new LED lights around the perimeter, the kind that shifted from blue to purple to soft white, replacing the filter system with a quieter model, testing the pH balance obsessively until the water was perfect. Every time I looked at that pool, I thought of her, the way she used to talk about retiring somewhere warm, somewhere with space to breathe, somewhere we could finally just be together without sirens interrupting dinner. The house felt empty without her, too quiet. But the pool, somehow, made it bearable. And for the first few weeks, I thought I'd found exactly what I was looking for. The neighbors seemed friendly enough at first, more than friendly, actually. Genuinely welcoming in that way that makes you think maybe small-town warmth still exists in suburban Arizona. The Johnsons lived next door, Bill and Linda, both retired school teachers in their early 70s. Linda brought over a plate of brownies the second day, still warm, wrapped in tinfoil with a note that said, "Welcome to the neighborhood," in careful cursive. Bill helped me figure out which breaker controlled the outdoor outlets when I was setting up the pool lights. Good people. The kind who wave every morning and actually mean it. Across the street were the Ramirez family. Maria and Carlos, mid-30s, with twin girls who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Every morning, around 7, I'd hear their laughter echoing through the cul-de-sac as they chased each other to the school bus stop. The girls loved waving at me when I was outside. Big gap-toothed grins and enthusiastic arm flailing that made me smile despite myself. Then there was Tom Parker, 3 houses down. A Vietnam vet with a gray ponytail who spent most mornings tinkering with his boat in the driveway. He introduced himself by asking if I knew anything about outboard motors. I didn't, but we stood there for an hour anyway, drinking coffee and talking about nothing in particular. He told me he'd lived in Sunridge for 12 years, said it was a good place as long as you kept your head down. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant by that. Everyone seemed welcoming, warm, the kind of neighborhood where people actually knew each other's names. Everyone except one. Across the cul-de-sac, in a house with a front yard so perfectly manicured it looked like it belonged in a golf course catalog, lived Courtney Whitmore. I didn't meet her right away, but I saw her every morning, like clockwork. She'd emerge from her house around 6:45 a.m., always impeccably dressed, even on weekends, always holding a coffee mug in one hand, phone in the other, and she'd stand there on her driveway, scanning the street with the intensity of a security guard on high alert. Her eyes would move methodically from house to house, lingering on details, a trash can left out too long, a car parked at a slight angle, a hedge that had grown an inch too tall. She had this way of looking at things that made you feel judged, even from 50 yards away. The first time we actually spoke, I was trimming the Palo Verde tree in my front yard. It was a Saturday morning in early February, maybe 10 days after I'd moved in. The sun was already brutal, climbing toward 80 degrees, even though it wasn't yet 9 a.m., and I was sweating through my shirt when I heard heels clicking on pavement. Sharp, rhythmic, purposeful. I turned, shears still in hand, and there she was, walking toward me like she had an appointment. Not the casual neighborly stroll where someone might wave and call out a greeting. This was a mission. And that's when I got my first real look at Courtney Whitmore. Mid-40s, I guessed, though it was hard to tell with the amount of effort she'd clearly put into her appearance. Tall, maybe 5 to 8, without the heels. Blonde haircut in that severe bob that somehow manages to look both expensive and hostile, and impossibly, almost unnaturally put together for a weekend morning in the Arizona heat. A crimson-red blazer draped loosely over her shoulders, perfectly tailored, the kind that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. It moved with her stride like it had been choreographed, catching the morning light. Underneath, a black silk blouse with a deep V-neck that would have been striking in a corporate boardroom but looked strangely, almost aggressively out of place next to my dusty work gloves and hedge trimmers. The matching pencil skirt, the same deep crimson as the blazer, had a subtle slit that moved with her stride, professional but just revealing enough to feel calculated. And the shoes, glossy red heels that matched both the blazer and her lips exactly, clicked against the asphalt like a metronome counting down to something. Her shoulder-length auburn hair, I realized it wasn't blonde up close, was styled in perfect waves that somehow hadn't been disturbed by the desert wind. It caught the morning sun in a way that looked almost unnatural, like she'd planned the lighting. And those lips, glossy red, the exact same shade as her blazer and heels, curved into something that might have been a smile if smiles were supposed to look threatening. She looked like she'd dressed for a fashion magazine photo shoot and gotten lost on the way to a country club. Or like she was making a statement, "This is who I am. This is the standard. Keep up." "Good morning," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my glove. She stopped a few feet away, adjusting her sunglasses on top of her head like a crown. "You must be the new homeowner," she said. Not a question. A statement. "That's right. David Martinez. Just moved in from Tucson. Love the area already." She murmured, glancing at the tree I was trimming. Her eyes moved slowly, methodically, like she was cataloging every branch. "Well, just so you know, the HOA has very specific landscaping standards. We like things uniform here." I chuckled. "Uniform? I'll try to keep the cactus from forming a union then." She didn't laugh, didn't even crack a smile. That's when I realized Courtney Whitmore wasn't the friendly suburban neighbor type. She was something else entirely. "I'm the HOA president," she continued, as if that explained everything. "We take pride in maintaining property values. I'm sure you understand." "Of course," I said, keeping my tone light. "I'm all for a nice neighborhood." "Good." She pulled a folded paper from her blazer pocket and handed it to me. "This is a copy of the community guidelines. I've highlighted the sections that apply to new residents. Tree height, exterior paint colors, that sort of thing." I glanced at the paper. It was covered in yellow highlighter and handwritten notes in the margins. "Appreciate it," I said, folding it back up. She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Martinez? Welcome to Sunridge Meadows. I'm sure you'll fit in just fine." The way she said it, with that thin smile and those glossy red lips pressing together, made it sound less like a welcome and more like a warning. The next week, I got my first official letter from the HOA. Except it wasn't from the HOA office. It was from Courtney, printed on her personal letterhead. 5 pages of regulations, highlighted and annotated like a legal brief. Pool lighting must not exceed 250 lumens. Outdoor furniture should be earth tones only. No gatherings of more than 6 vehicles without prior approval. Rosa would have laughed. She always said I had a talent for attracting the overly organized types, but I wasn't laughing. Something about the tone, the meticulous detail, the way she'd underlined certain words twice, felt off. Linda Johnson, my neighbor, noticed me reading it on the porch. "Got the Courtney welcome packet, huh?" she called over the fence. I held it up. "Is this normal?" She grimaced. "Courtney's been HOA president for about 8 years. She takes it very seriously." "Seriously is one thing. This feels like surveillance." Linda lowered her voice. "Just keep your head down. She's run off 3 families in the last 5 years. Constant complaints, violations, threats. People get tired and leave." I frowned. "What kind of complaints?" "Everything. Lawn height, paint colors. One family had their kids' trampoline reported as a safety hazard. Another got cited for parking an RV in their own driveway for 2 days. I shook my head. "That's not HOA enforcement. That's harassment." Linda shrugged. "Good luck proving it." She's got the board wrapped around her finger. I folded the letter and went back inside. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what Linda had said. 3 families, run off. And I remembered the way Courtney had looked at me that first morning. Not curious, not welcoming. Assessing, like she was already deciding whether I belonged. For a while, I tried to stay under the radar. Kept the yard pristine. Painted the trim, the approved beige. Even moved my truck into the garage instead of the driveway. But Courtney wasn't interested in compliance. She was interested in control. 2 weeks after I moved in, she stopped her white Lexus in front of my mailbox while I was checking the mail. She rolled down the window, those glossy red lips curving into that same thin smile. "Mr. Martinez," she called. "Most residents here prefer to keep outdoor furniture neutral. That blue umbrella by your pool stands out." I glanced at the bright blue patio umbrella Rosa had picked out years ago. "That's the idea," I said calmly. "I like color. Makes the place feel alive." Her smile tightened. "This isn't that kind of neighborhood." Then she rolled up the window and drove off. I stood there, holding my mail, watching her Lexus disappear around the corner. "What kind of neighborhood is it then?" I muttered. The incidents escalated slowly at first. Little things that individually seemed petty but collectively painted a disturbing picture. A note taped to my door the 3rd week. Trash bins were left out 14 hours past collection time, violation of Section 7.3. I checked the actual HOA bylaws online. There was no Section 7.3 about trash bins. Another note, this one stuck under my windshield wiper. Your pool pump runs past 9 p.m., which violates noise ordinances per community standards. I called the county office. There was no noise ordinance for pool equipment. The woman on the phone laughed when I explained the complaint. Sir, pool pumps run 24, 7 inches Arizona. If that was illegal, nobody would have pools. Then came the morning she appeared at my fence while I was cleaning the pool. Mid-February, temperature already pushing 75 at 8 a.m. I was skimming leaves from the surface, enjoying the quiet, when I heard those heels clicking across concrete. She didn't say hello, didn't even pretend this was a social visit, just stood there at the fence line, clipboard in hand, those red heels sinking slightly into my grass, that crimson blazer catching the early light like a warning flag. You know, she started not even looking at me, eyes fixed on the pool. The HOA requires written approval for any pool modifications or improvements. I straightened up, holding the skimmer. I didn't modify anything, Courtney, just cleaned it. The watercolor changed. I stared at her. That's called chlorine. Her glossy lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. You don't need to be snarky, Mr. Martinez. We have community standards here, and I'm meeting them. Every single one. She didn't respond. Just wrote something on her clipboard, the pen scratching loudly in the morning, quiet, then turned and walked away without another word. Those red heels clicking back across my property line like she'd just issued a citation. The next morning, an envelope was taped to my door. Notice of potential OA violation. Inside, a printed form with checkboxes. Pool maintenance without approval had been marked. Estimated fine, $150. I crumpled it and tossed it in the recycling. But I also installed my first security camera that afternoon. A simple Ring doorbell camera to start, pointed at the front door and driveway. Something in my gut, the same instinct that had kept me alive through 30 years of running into burning buildings, told me to document everything. Courtney Whitmore wasn't done, not even close. Over the next 3 weeks, the harassment accelerated in frequency and absurdity. She left a note about my truck being parked crooked in my own driveway. Crooked by maybe 2 inches. She sent an email claiming my exterior paint color, which was the exact same beige it had been when I bought the place, was in violation of community aesthetic guidelines. She photographed my trash cans on collection day and sent the image to the HOA office with a complaint that they were the wrong color. They were black. Standard issue from the city. Linda Johnson caught me reading one of these emails on my porch one afternoon. Got the Courtney welcome packet, huh? She called over the fence. Her voice sympathetic, but tinged with something else. Resignation, maybe. I held up my phone. Is this normal? She walked over, leaning against the fence, her expression troubled. Courtney's been HOA president for about 8 years, she said quietly. She takes it very seriously. Too seriously. Seriously is one thing, I said. This feels like harassment. Linda lowered her voice even further, glancing toward Courtney's house like she might be listening. Between you and me, she's run off 3 families in the last 5 years. Constant complaints, bogus violations, threats of fines. People just get exhausted and leave. I frowned. What kind of families? Linda hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Mixed couples, mostly. 1 black family, 1 Hispanic couple with kids, 1 interracial newlywed couple. She always found reasons. Too many cars, wrong paint color, lawn height, but everyone knew what it was really about. My stomach tightened. So, this isn't about pool pumps and trash cans. No, Linda said softly. It's not. We stood there in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Have you reported her? I asked. To who? She controls the HOA board. Or she did, until they finally voted her out 2 years ago. But she still acts like she's in charge, and most people are too intimidated to push back. I shook my head. I'm not most people. Linda gave me a sad smile. I know. That's what worries me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Linda had said. 3 families. Runoff. And I remembered the way Courtney had looked at me that first morning. Not just annoyed. Not just suspicious. Assessing, calculating, deciding whether I was worth the effort to remove. The next morning, I was proven right. Things went quiet for a week or so after that. An uneasy truce that felt more like the calm before a storm. Then, in late February, I decided to host a small barbecue. Nothing fancy. Just a handful of neighbors, the Johnsons, the Ramirez family, a couple of guys from my old fire station who'd driven up from Tucson for the afternoon. I'd sent a courtesy email to the HOA office letting them know I'd have guests. Got an automated reply saying residential gatherings under 12 people required no special permits. It was a perfect Arizona evening, temperature dropping into the 60s, clear sky. The kind of weather that makes you remember why people moved to the desert. Music played at a reasonable volume, classic rock from a Bluetooth speaker. The smell of burgers and carne asada filled the air. Kids laughed in the pool. Adults stood around the patio, cold drinks in hand, talking about nothing important. For the first time since Rosa died, I felt something close to happy. That lasted exactly 45 minutes. I was flipping burgers when I heard the gate slam open. Not pushed open, slammed, like someone wanted everyone to know they'd arrived. Courtney stormed into my backyard, that crimson blazer billowing behind her like a cape, those red heels clicking furiously against the concrete, her face flushed and tight with rage. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. Someone turned down the music. Even the kids in the pool went quiet. She marched straight up to me, stopping 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something floral and expensive and completely out of place at a backyard barbecue. This gathering wasn't authorized, she announced loudly, her voice cutting through the evening air like a siren. I set down the spatula slowly. Authorized? Courtney? It's a barbecue, not a political rally. You didn't request guest parking permits, she snapped, gesturing toward the driveway where my friends' cars were neatly parked. There's space on my driveway. And the street. No one's blocking anything. Her glossy red lips pressed into a razor-thin line. Rules are rules, Mr. Martinez. The HOA specifically states that gatherings exceeding 4 guest vehicles require advance notice. I glanced at the driveway. There were exactly 3 guest vehicles. I see 3 cars, Courtney. She faltered for half a second, then recovered. That's not the point. The point is, you didn't notify the board. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to my emails, and held it up. I notified the HOA office on Tuesday, got confirmation that no permit was needed for under 12 people. Want to see the email? Her face flushed darker. The office doesn't speak for the board. The office is the board. She took a step closer, voice dropping to something that sounded almost dangerous. You think you can just move here and ignore how things work? This neighborhood has standards. We've maintained those standards for 15 years. And I'm respecting them, I said evenly. I'm on my own property, with a small group of friends, following every rule in the actual HOA bylaws. If you have a problem with that, maybe the problem isn't me. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched that clipboard. For a moment, I thought she might actually hit me with it. Instead, she looked around at my guests, at the Johnsons, at Maria and Carlos Ramirez, at my firefighter buddies, all watching this bizarre confrontation unfold. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter but somehow more venomous. This isn't over, Mr. Martinez. People like you come in here, you think you own the place. But this is our neighborhood, and we protect what's ours. The way she said people like you landed like a slap. Bill Johnson stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. Courtney, that's enough. David's done nothing wrong. You need to leave. She spun toward him, shocked that anyone would dare contradict her. Excuse me? You heard me. You're making a scene. On his property. Leave. For a long, tense moment, she just stood there, chest heaving, that crimson blazer rising and falling with her breath. Then she turned on her heel and stormed out, those red heels hammering against the concrete, the gate slamming behind her so hard it shook the fence. The silence that followed was almost as loud as her exit. Maria Ramirez spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's insane." "No," Bill said quietly. "She's dangerous, and she's not done." He was right, because that night, long after everyone went home, long after I'd cleaned up the grill and turned off the lights, I checked my security cameras. At 11:47 p.m., Courtney had returned. She'd walked along the fence line with a flashlight, stopping every few feet to take pictures. My backyard, my pool, my patio furniture, building her case. The day before the pool incident, I caught her watching me from her upstairs window. I was trimming hedges in the front yard, and when I glanced up, there she was, standing behind the glass, phone in hand, filming, not even trying to hide it. I waved. She disappeared. That night, Linda Johnson came over looking worried. "David," she said, "Courtney's been asking questions about you, where you're from, how you afforded the house, whether you're renting or owning." I frowned. "Why does that matter?" She shrugged. "I don't know, but she's obsessed, and when Courtney gets obsessed, bad things happen." I thanked her and went inside, but I didn't sleep well that night. And the next morning, when I woke up early and decided to take a peaceful swim, I had no idea that Courtney's obsession was about to turn into something far more dangerous. The water was perfect that Sunday morning. Cool, clear. The kind of stillness that makes you forget the world exists. I floated on my back, eyes closed, listening to the hum of the filter and the faint rustle of palm trees in the breeze. Rosa would have loved this, I thought. Then I heard the sirens. Loud, close, multiple. I opened my eyes just as 3 Phoenix PD cruisers screeched to a halt in front of my house. Doors flew open. Officers poured out, hands on their weapons. And then I heard the voice I'd come to dread. Courtney, standing at the end of her driveway, phone in hand, that smug, satisfied look on her face. "That's him," she shouted, pointing at me. "That's the trespasser. I told you he's been using the pool without permission." My heart sank, because I knew right then that this wasn't about a misunderstanding. This was about power. And Courtney Whitmore had just weaponized the police against me. The lead officer's voice boomed across the backyard. "Sir, step out of the pool now. Keep your hands visible." For a moment, I didn't move. My brain was scrambling, trying to process what was happening. Then I saw their faces, young, tense, hands on their holsters. These weren't cops looking for a misunderstanding. These were cops responding to a threat. I raised my hand slowly, water dripping from my fingers. "Officers," I called out, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "My name is David Martinez. I own this property. I'm happy to show you my ID, but it's inside the house." One of the officers, a woman with sharp eyes and a tight ponytail, motioned for the others to lower their weapons slightly. "Sir, stay where you are." We received a 911 call about an armed trespasser. Armed? I looked down at my soaking swim trunks and bare chest. Unless my pool noodles considered a weapon, somebody's lying. Behind them, Courtney stepped forward, that crimson blazer bright against the desert morning. "Officers, I'm the HOA president. This man has been occupying the property without authorization. I've documented multiple violations. He doesn't belong here." The lead officer, his name tag reading Daniels, turned toward her. "Ma'am, do you have proof this man isn't the homeowner?" Her jaw tightened, those glossy red lips pressing into a line. "Proof?" She gestured at me. "Look at him." The yard went silent. Even Officer Daniels' expression shifted. A flicker of recognition, followed by something that looked like exhaustion. He knew exactly what kind of call this was. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "we're going to need more than that." I slowly climbed out of the pool, water pooling around my feet. "Officer Daniels, if you'll follow me to the patio table, I've got my wallet, the deed to this house, and about 6 months of utility bills with my name on them." Daniels nodded. "Slow movements, please?" As I walked toward the table, Courtney kept shouting, "He's lying. I saw him break in weeks ago. This house was on the market not long ago. He must have moved in illegally." I turned, dripping wet, and looked her dead in the eye. "Courtney, you've seen me here every single day since January. You've left notes on my door. You've sent me fake HOA violations. You know I live here." Her face flushed red, that auburn hair catching the sun as she shook her head violently. "HOA records don't show a transfer yet. Until I see official documentation, he's trespassing." Officer Daniels opened my wallet, examined my driver's license, then flipped through the folder I handed him. Purchase agreement, title deed, utility bills. After a long minute, he sighed and handed everything back. "Mr. Martinez, you're good. I apologize for the disturbance." Courtney's mouth fell open. "Wait, what? You're just letting him go?" Daniels turned toward her, his tone hardening. "Ma'am, this man owns this property. You need to return to your home immediately. You don't understand," she insisted, stepping closer. "People like him, they lie, they manipulate, they—" "Ma'am," Daniels interrupted sharply, "you are dangerously close to filing a false police report. Do you understand what that means?" The silence that followed was deafening. Courtney stood there, chest rising and falling, that crimson blazer suddenly looking too bright, too out of place. Then she turned on her heel and stormed off, those red heels clicking furiously against the pavement. But even as she disappeared behind her gate, I could feel her rage radiating across the cul-de-sac. When the cruisers finally pulled away, I stood in my driveway, dripping wet, staring at the tire marks they'd left in the gravel. Linda Johnson came running over, her face pale. "David, that could have gone so wrong." "I know." She paused, then said quietly, "She's not done. You know that, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, I know." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me tense, every car door, every footstep on the sidewalk. I kept replaying the moment those guns were pointed at me, the split second where fear and authority intersect and bad things happen. I'd been lucky. Very lucky. But I wasn't naive enough to think Courtney would just let this go. People like her, people who build their identity around control, don't retreat when they're challenged. They escalate. The next morning, I reviewed the security footage. Sure enough, there she was, pacing her backyard for nearly 40 minutes before the police arrived, on her phone the entire time, gesturing angrily toward my house. At one point, she even zoomed in with her camera, filming me swimming, building her case. I saved the clip, labeled it insurance, harassment, and backed it up in 3 places. Then I called a lawyer. His name was Marcus Reed, a guy I'd worked with during a fire investigation years ago. Sharp, thorough, didn't mess around, "David," he said after I explained everything. "This is textbook harassment. And if she filed a false police report, that's a criminal offense. What do? Document everything. Keep those cameras rolling. And if she contacts you again, call me immediately." I hung up feeling slightly better, but only slightly, because I knew Courtney. And I knew that being told no, being publicly corrected by the police, would only make her angrier. Over the next few days, she tried to act normal. But her version of normal was cold silence and occasional glares from across the street. She left sticky notes on my mailbox. HOA reminder, annual pool safety inspections required. She sent an email from the HOA address. Property violations may result in fines. I forwarded everything to Marcus. Then I did something that made Linda laugh. I called the actual HOA office. The woman who answered sounded confused. "Courtney Whitmore? No, sir, she's not on our board. She was president about 7 years ago, but she was voted out after some disagreements." I blinked. "So she's just pretending?" The woman hesitated. "We've received complaints about her before. If she's impersonating an HOA official, that's something we need to address." I hung up and stared at the phone. "Queen without a kingdom," I muttered. But that made her more dangerous, not less. Because people who lose power often do desperate things to feel it again. 2 weeks later, I caught her taking pictures of my fence. I walked over calmly, hands in my pockets. "Morning, Courtney. Can I help you with something?" She startled, then recovered, lifting her chin. "Routine documentation. HOA perimeter survey. Didn't know we were surveying fences now. We have to ensure property boundaries are respected. I nodded slowly. You mean the boundaries you crossed when you called the cops on me? Her eyes narrowed, those glossy red lips pressing into a tight line. You think this is over, Mr. Martinez? I think it should have never started. I turned and walked away before she could respond. But that night, Linda knocked on my door, holding a piece of paper. This was taped to your mailbox, she said quietly. I unfolded it. Handwritten, blocky letters. You might have fooled the police, but you don't belong here. The AOA will take care of it. Linda's hands were shaking. David, you need to call the police. I will, but first, I'm documenting this. I photographed the note from every angle, saved it in a plastic bag, added it to the growing file Marcus was building. Then I installed 3 more cameras, hidden ones this time, covering every angle of my property. If Courtney wanted to escalate, I'd be ready. For a brief period, she vanished. No notes, no emails, no appearances at the fence. It felt like the calm before a storm. Then one Sunday afternoon in mid-March, while my daughter Isabella and her 2 boys were visiting, I caught movement near the hedge, a flash of auburn hair, the glint of something metallic. Isabella, I said quietly, take the boys inside. Dad, what's wrong? Just do it, please. As they hurried through the sliding door, I saw Courtney retreat behind her fence, but this time, something was different. She wasn't holding a clipboard. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something bigger, something dangerous. And I was right, because the next Sunday she didn't just watch from a distance. She climbed my fence. With a gun. It was March 16th, 2025. A Sunday. Warm. Sunny. Perfect Arizona weather. Isabella had brought the boys over for lunch by the pool. We were grilling chicken, laughing, watching the kids chase each other with water guns. For the first time in weeks, I felt like things were normal again. Then, I heard her voice. You, people never learn. Everyone froze. I turned toward the fence, and there she was, Courtney Whitmore, standing on her side at first, that crimson blazer draped over her shoulders, auburn hair catching the sunlight. Glossy red lips twisted into something between rage and satisfaction, and in her right hand, raised and shaking, was a gun. The glint of steel made my blood run cold. Courtney, I said, stepping between her and my family, put that down. Don't tell me what to do, she hissed. This is my street, my neighborhood. Mom, the kids, Isabella whispered behind me, voice breaking. Inside, I said quietly, now. Isabella gathered the boys and rushed them through the sliding door. I could hear her on the phone with 911. Courtney climbed over the fence. Actually climbed it. Her heel caught on the wood, snapped clean off, but she didn't care. She landed hard on my grass, gun still in hand. I warned you, she shouted. I told you this neighborhood has standards, but you ignored me. You people always do. I raised both hands slowly. Courtney, everyone can see you right now. My cameras are recording. The police are on their way. Just put the gun down, she laughed. A dry, bitter sound. Your cameras don't scare me. The HOA will back me up. They'll see what kind of person you really are. The HOA voted you out 7 years ago. Her face twisted. Liar. Then came the sirens. Again, 3 cruisers. Same as before. Courtney turned toward the sound, and for a split second, the barrel wavered. It's over, I said softly. Put it down. She whipped back toward me, finger tightening on the trigger. My stomach turned to ice. Piper, drop the weapon, shouted Officer Daniels as he burst through the gate, weapon drawn. Behind him, 2 more officers fanned out, covering angles. Do it now. For one terrible second, she didn't move. Then she screamed, he's trespassing. He's got a gun too. She pointed the weapon at me. The officers froze, training, kicking in, assessing, but Daniels didn't fall for it this time. Ma'am, he said firmly, We've been through this. Lower your weapon now." She hesitated, trembling. Then one of the officers, a younger guy named Torres, moved to her side. "Ma'am, please, don't make this worse." Her grip loosened, the gun sagged. Then, as if realizing she'd lost, Courtney's face twisted into pure fury. "You people always get away with everything." Torres lunged. The gun went off. Bang! A single deafening shot that echoed off every house in the cul-de-sac. Birds exploded from the trees. My ears rang. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. The bullet hit the ground 2 feet in front of me, kicking up dirt and grass. Courtney screamed as Torres tackled her, the gun skittering across the lawn. Daniels and another officer rushed in, restraining her as she thrashed. "This isn't over. You'll regret this. I'm the real homeowner." Daniels' voice was ice cold. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for trespassing, assault with a deadly weapon, and filing a false police report." As they cuffed her, she kept shrieking, wild and incoherent. "The HOA will fix this. You'll see. They'll believe me." They led her away, still shouting, still fighting. The whole street watched, some filming, some whispering. For the first time, Courtney Whitmore looked small, powerless, broken. Isabella ran out, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, voice shaking. "But I think she just ruined her life." Officer Daniels approached, his expression softer now. "Mr. Martinez, Mrs. Martinez, I'm sorry you had to go through this again. We'll need your statement and the footage. You'll have it," I said, "every second." After the cruisers left, silence settled over the yard again. The smell of gunpowder lingered. A small hole in the lawn marked where the bullet had struck. Isabella stared at it, trembling. "She could have killed you, Dad." "Yeah," I said quietly, "but she didn't." That night, after everyone went home, I sat by the pool, staring at the water. The reflections shimmered like ghosts. What drives someone to that edge, I wondered? Control? Hate? Fear of losing power? Maybe all of the above. The next morning, reporters showed up at my gate. Word had spread fast. HOA president pulls gun on neighbor. I refused interviews, but one reporter shouted a question as they packed up. "Mr. Martinez, do you think she's dangerous?" I looked straight into the camera. "I think some people mistake control for safety, and that's the most dangerous thing there is." 2 days later, Officer Daniels called. Courtney's gun wasn't registered. She didn't have a license, and they'd found evidence she'd been stalking multiple neighbors, not just me. There would be serious charges: unlawful possession, reckless endangerment, hate crime allegations under review. When I hung up, Isabella asked, "Do you think she'll come back?" I looked out the window at Courtney's empty house, blinds drawn, garden unwatered, mailbox stuffed full. "No," I said, "not the same way." But I had no idea the story wasn't finished yet, because while the police had taken Courtney away that day, the real reckoning was still to come. The days after the shooting were eerily quiet. No lawnmowers, no kids playing, not even the usual hum of sprinklers. It was like the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. I spent that Monday morning reviewing the security footage again, not out of curiosity, but necessity. The cameras had caught everything. At 10:14 a.m., Courtney appeared in her backyard, gun already in hand, pacing, muttering, checking her phone. At 10:16, she climbed my fence, heel snapped, stumbled, raised the gun with both hands. You could see it in her face. Not fear, not confusion, conviction. She really believed she was right. Isabella couldn't watch. She turned away, tears in her eyes. I sent copies to my lawyer, Marcus Reed. When he called later, his tone was grim. "David, this isn't harassment anymore. This is aggravated assault, and based on what I'm seeing, there's a clear racial component. We're filing this as a hate crime." I exhaled slowly. "I'm not after revenge, Marcus. I just want it to stop. And it will. But you need to see this through. For your safety and everyone else's. That afternoon, the police returned for follow-up statements. Officer Daniels came in first, hat in hand. "Mr. Martinez, I owe you an apology. We should have recognized how serious her behavior was the first time." "It's not on you," I said. "You handled it when it counted." Daniels nodded. "Still bothers me. You were just trying to live your life." Officer Torres joined him, setting down a tablet. "We ran the gun's serial number. It's unregistered, and it's been linked to a prior domestic complaint 6 years ago. Her ex-husband reported she'd threatened him during an argument. Case was dropped." Isabella looked stunned. "So, this wasn't the first time?" Torres shook his head. "No, ma'am. Seems like it was only a matter of time. By Wednesday, the district attorney's office announced charges: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, criminal trespassing, filing false police reports, unlawful possession of a firearm, hate crime enhancement under review." The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, local stations had the headline everywhere: HOA president pulls gun on neighbor, entire incident caught on camera. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends, reporters, strangers. One message read, "Thank you for standing your ground. People like her need accountability." Another, "That could have been me." I realized then, this wasn't just my story anymore. It was bigger. About how power, prejudice, and paranoia can turn a quiet neighborhood into a war zone. That night, Isabella and I sat by the pool. "She's probably sitting in a cell right now," Isabella said quietly. "Do you think she understands what she did?" I shook my head. "People like Courtney never think they're wrong. She'll convince herself she was protecting something. Her status, her street, her pride. But not the truth." A few days later, Officer Daniels called again. "She's insisting on pressing charges against you, Mr. Martinez. Claims you threatened her with surveillance equipment." I laughed. "Threatened her with a camera?" Daniels chuckled. "Don't worry. The DA dismissed it. She's in deep." At the preliminary hearing, the courtroom was tense. Courtney sat behind the defense table in a gray blazer and handcuffs. The confidence was gone. She looked smaller now, tired. Her lawyer tried to argue mental distress, claiming she'd acted out of fear. When it was my turn to testify, I kept my tone even. She didn't act out of fear. She acted out of hate and entitlement. She thought she could decide who belonged. The prosecutor played the footage. The entire room fell silent except for Courtney's voice screaming, "This property doesn't belong to you." Judge Thompson, a tall woman with a calm but commanding presence, leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, did you or did you not climb onto Mr. Martinez's property with a loaded weapon?" Courtney's voice cracked. "I was protecting my community." The judge's tone sharpened. "By threatening a man on his own property? By lying to 911? Mrs. Whitmore, you've endangered lives." The verdict came swift. Guilty on multiple counts. The sentence, 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation, mandatory psychiatric counseling. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Mr. Martinez, how do you feel about the sentence?" I looked into the camera. "Justice isn't about punishment. It's about prevention. I hope she gets help. But I also hope people realize cameras don't lie. And neither does hate." 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the police department. A thank you for my cooperation, along with a note from Officer Torres. "Because of your footage, several neighbors have come forward about her harassment. You might have saved someone else's life." Reading that made my chest tighten. All the fear, the sleepless nights, maybe they'd meant something after all. By autumn, Sunridge Meadows felt normal again. The HOA replaced Courtney with a new president, a retired teacher named Angela Brennan who preferred book clubs to bylaws. She stopped by one afternoon with cookies and a genuine smile. "We just want everyone to get along again." For the first time, I believed it might actually be possible. One cold afternoon in late autumn, something unexpected arrived. A letter from County Corrections. "Mr. Martinez, I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say thank you for not seeking vengeance. I've spent the last few months realizing I built my identity on control, not community. You didn't just expose my actions, you forced me to see myself. I've started therapy. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Courtney Whitmore. I stared at it for a long time. Relief. Vindication. Sadness. Maybe all three. I showed it to Isabella. Maybe that's the closest thing to peace you'll get from her, she said. Maybe, I replied, folding it carefully. That night, as the first snow dusted the desert mountains, I poured 2 mugs of cocoa and sat on the porch. The world looked softer, forgiving. You ever think we were meant to move here? Isabella asked. Like this house, all this chaos, maybe had a purpose? I smiled. You mean, was I destined to be the neighborhood's accidental hero? She laughed, something like that. I thought about it. About how one stubborn man and one broken woman had dragged a quiet community out of complacency. Maybe you're right. Maybe this was supposed to happen. Maybe it was never about her or me. Maybe it was about everyone watching, realizing that silence lets people like her win. Isabella rested her head on my shoulder. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. A few weeks later, I ran into Officer Torres at the grocery store. Mr. Martinez, he said, shaking my hand. How's retirement treating you, now that you're not dodging bullets? I laughed. It's quieter, thanks to you guys. He grinned. You know, Courtney's due for release in the spring. She's under strict supervision, can't come anywhere near this area, but word is she's doing well in therapy. Let's hope so, I said, though I think this place learned what community means before she did. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I walked out to the pool, the same pool that had once been the center of chaos. The water was still, reflecting the pink-orange sky. I dipped my hand in, letting the cold ripple outward. Everything felt full circle. Isabella joined me, wrapping her arm around my waist. This pool nearly got you killed, she said. I smiled. And now it's just water again. That's the funny thing about peace. It always looks ordinary when it's real. She rested her head on my shoulder. So what now, Dad? Now, I said, gazing across the quiet street. Now, I just live. And maybe, if we're lucky, we make sure no one ever lets another HOA queen turn power into poison again. We stood there until the sun disappeared, reflections fading into darkness. The house behind us glowed with warmth and light. Everything we'd fought to protect. Life in a neighborhood, or anywhere, isn't about rules or property lines. It's about respect. About knowing a community only works when people see each other as equals, not enemies. Courtney Whitmore thought power would earn her respect. But real respect isn't forced. It's earned through kindness, fairness, and humility. If this story taught me anything, it's that silence in the face of injustice is its own kind of crime. Sometimes standing your ground doesn't mean fighting with fists or fury. It means staying calm, collecting truth, and trusting that light always exposes darkness. So wherever you're watching from, tell me, have you ever dealt with a Courtney in your life? Someone who tried to control what wasn't theirs? Drop your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just prove again that karma never skips an address.